Om Sadhana Bhavatu Sadhana Bhavatu Sadhana Karavali Tejasvinavati Tamasuma Vidvishavati Om Shanti 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 Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. In the second verse that I just recited, it ends with Vande Guru Paramparam. Sadashiva Samarambham start with Lord Shiva. Sometimes a variation of this particular verse says Narayana Samarambham. Doesn't matter whether Narayana or Shiva. Shiva and Narayana, they don't fight, only humans fight. Okay? So it starts with God, or what we call as Ishvara. This is a very, very important point. It starts with Ishvara. Here, Sadashiva Samarambham. Shankaracharya Madhyama. Madhyama means in the middle. So it starts with God. In the middle, we have Shankara. Who is Shankara? You can see his name here. Adi Shankara. All right, so it comes in the middle. And then Asmadacharya. Asmadacharya means my teacher. Is right in front of me. Right? Then the three God, Shankara, and my teacher now become a chain. Right? Right from the top coming down. It is called a parampara. So why is this parampara very important? Some may ask. You would have heard this term, Guru Parampara. There's a parampara for everything. Right? If you go to, let's say, a dance school, there is a parampara. Have you heard of that? Raise your hand if you've heard of that. Right? So the parampara means succession. That's what it means. The lineage. That's what it means. So why is this parampara important? And I recited this because this parampara holds a very important key. Now, this key is very precious. And Shankara makes a very important point, or implies, that this key that the parampara holds cannot be written. It has to be passed down from teacher to student. And then the student shares this knowledge, and the student then becomes a teacher. Remember, the role of the teacher is a role, it's not a person. It's a role that we pick up. It's not a permanent identity. Can you see that? So we all pick up roles. So the function of the teacher is very important. The function, he or she, as a teacher, will pass this key to the next person, and the next person passes the key down. And this key is, as it is with all keys, what do we use keys for? To unlock something, correct? So what does this key unlock that is passed down the tradition? It unlocks the gateway to liberation. That's what it does. And this key is a very important method of teaching, as we call it. Shankara spends a lot of time unfolding how is this method used and how should this method be even employed. Now, that to receive this key is not something to be proud of. It's something is to be grateful when they come as part of this tradition. By saying this, I enjoyed the introductory speeches, but there is this appellation that I'm the author, right? I cannot be the author. None of the teachers in the tradition call themselves authors. In fact, there are many texts in the tradition for which the person who wrote it did not even state his author. So how can I even put my name on it? So I want to share with you that I'm very aware that my name there is insignificant, as much as it appears. But what is significant in this book is the very scripture called Sadhana Panchakam and what it teaches. And what I've written is presenting what I have learned. Now, there are many ways to understand the text. Many teachers can unfold it, and I think you can learn from different versions or different commentaries of Sadhana Panchakam. This is what I've learned from my teacher. Therefore, I decided to write. Actually, it's not even something that I wrote. That's what Anu had shared. I taught this text at the Hindu Center more than a decade ago, I think, around 15 years ago. I taught this text. Eventually, it got transcribed, and I rewrote it based on that. So it's very special for me to deliver this talk today. It's like coming home to where this particular text was actually conceived. I also want to acknowledge my gratitude and thanks to Anu for making this happen. So let's give her a hand for that as well. Yes. Okay. That makes sense. So now I'm going to present what this text is all about. Would you like to know? Yes. Not what my book is all about yet. Okay. What the text is all about. What the scripture Sadhana Panchakam is all about. And I'll also share what are some unique things that I discovered in my own journey. All right. That may resonate with you or may not resonate. It doesn't matter. But I'll share with you what I gained. So as you can see on this slide, this is a picture of who? Adi Shankara. One of the oldest paintings of Adi Shankara. Very difficult to find this particular depiction. Now, why do we have this photo of Adi Shankara, drawing of Adi Shankara? Because he is the author of Sadhana Panchakam. So let's look at it. So the authorship of this particular text is attributed to Shankaracharya, or sometimes called Adi Shankara. Adi means first. Why do you use the word Adi? Because there are many Shankaras. Even now there are Shankaras. Because Shankara is a title for all the 4 or more matams. Matams means they are actually centers of learning that Adi Shankara established. So therefore, we use the word Adi to distinguish the first Shankara from the other Shankaras. And in this text, there are only 5 verses in total actually. That's why it's called Panchakam. So Panchakam means a set of 5 verses. And interestingly, each of the verse presents, we divide 40 divided by 5, what do you get? 8. How many? 8. So each verse teaches 8 sadhanas. Sadhana means a practice or spiritual practice, to be very specific. All right. So in total, this text teaches 40 spiritual practices called sadhana. Beautiful, 40. You don't find a text that has so many sadhanas all in one text. And I'll tell you why. Because there's a structure to it, very beautiful structure to this. And what is the purpose of the text? Achieving liberation. How many of you here hope to attain liberation? No, I didn't say desire. Hope. Hope means a bit further from desire. Okay? How many of you hope to attain liberation? Raise your hand. Okay, so thank you very much. If you don't hope, it doesn't matter. Okay. Shankara also says it's okay. Shankara says in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, you don't desire liberation, but more important, be happy. Okay. In whatever that you are pursuing, because we can also be happy without having to seek liberation. It's a very important, very subtle point. We can be happy even without seeking liberation. It's possible. If you're interested, we can talk about it after this session. Okay. So, what is liberation? Can anyone tell me what is liberation? You can give any kind of response. Just so that you know it's not a test. Okay. There's no rating or no score for right or wrong answer. There's no wrong answer. Tell me, what do you think liberation is?
Freedom from birth and death.
Freedom from birth and death is one way of presenting it. You're saying something else, sorry.
No, I was okay. Just keep my mind. I'll come back.
Okay, got it. Thank you. What else? Self-actualization. Self-actualization, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like self-actualization. Okay, what else? Freedom from desires. Okay, thank you. Detaching yourself from the sorrows of life. Detaching oneself from the sorrows of life. Thank you. We one more response.
Merging of the Jivatma with the Karma.
Equal definition. Merging with the individual self with the cosmic self, right? Cosmic. So, see, I told you no wrong answer. Right? If you happen to be here, definitely they're unlikely to have wrong answers because we all know what liberation is to a certain extent. But what perhaps a lot of times we don't do is to inquire into the nature. But let's also see what Shankara says about liberation. Let's look at that. So, according to the Vedanta tradition, liberation is seeing or knowing Brahman. That's the conclusion. That is there. Then what is it? What is the nature of liberation? So Shankara presents this very beautifully. Shankara gives a set of definitions. It's a set of definitions. It's not just one word. Like you can make sense of it. To be honest, to just cover all of these words, I would need about 10 classes. Just to cover all these words, I'm going to give it a very generic sense. The first thing he says is liberation is the very supreme reality. It's called Paramarthika. Means it's the ultimate. There's nothing higher than this. That's what Shankara says. Another point he says it is eternal and changeless, which is Pustaka Event, which means that it's like it is something that cannot change at all. That means it is not subject to what? Birth and death. That is changeless. All right, he makes that statement. And then he says it is all pervasive like space. Many of you would know Isha Vasya Upanishad, the opening verse. Anyone knows that? Isha Vasya Vidam Sarva. Isha means Ishvara is everywhere, all pervasive. So he makes the same point. The whole the experience of liberation is actually all pervasive. That means it's not contained in a particular space, in a particular part of space, in that sense. It cannot be confined by space. And then it is free from all modifications. That means you cannot modify it. So you know what's the trick here? If you cannot modify it, that means you cannot change, correct? If you cannot change, then you cannot gain it also. There's no change of state. Because if you say that you're going to attain liberation, that means what? There's a change of state, agree? Because now I'm not liberated. So after that I become. So is there a change? But he says no modifications, no changes. So now big headache, right? That's right. So you must. I'm going to leave that as a question. You can even go to ChatGPT and ask. Okay. Now, this is a very beautiful word. Always contented. It says the person, the liberated state is always contented, always full. So if they always full, then is what? They don't have desires. They don't do anything. Not true. They may have desires. They may do something. Like Shankara wrote so many texts, right? So many great acharyas and gurus have written so many texts. But still, their contentment doesn't diminish as a result of an action or activity. That's a key point. And is without parts. Okay, that means liberation means there are no parts. When mind is liberated, the body is not. Or the prana is liberated, but the intellect is not. No such parts. Liberation means full liberation. And self-effulgent, meaning that it is something that. Another word that is used is chaitanya. You would have heard this word. It means that it's luminous, meaning it is awareness. It's one nature of pure awareness. That's another way to look at this particular definition. And very important, not subject to dharma or adharma, or it results in 3 periods of time. That means what it means is that the dharma is not the means to it. That's a very important point. It's not the means to it. Adharma is also not the means. Right? Very important point. So it's something that we'll talk about in a while. And the final point he says is not identifying with the body. That means this freedom means that when I attain this liberation, I'm body. Now, what's the problem with the body? Tell me. It has needs. What else?
One-time use.
One-time use only. One-time use. Keep changing. Attachment. Material. Yes. And then after you pass the 50, mark, you have a rich experience. When climbing the stairs, because I just passed half a century, after that climbing stairs is not easy. So the body can be a limitation after some time. Yes, sir. And then what do? We spend a lot of time trying to look young. Correct? So what does that tell us? The body is a very important part of our life, which is the first limitation that we experience. And that is why liberation is there. See, it's not freeing oneself from the body. What is the key word here? Not being identified with the body while using the body. That's a key point. So this is basically the definition of liberation according to Shankara. I'll share this in a while where it appears. So how do we now become that? Right? Is it a good question? How do we attain liberation? Is that a good question? By the way, it's a question to you. That's a good question. Right? Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the response. This happens only in Singapore. If you want to ask a question, I don't get a response. But in other parts, if I ask a question, I get too many responses, I got to stop. But it's okay, right? I will nudge you. So how do we know Brahman? How do we come to know Brahman? So here is where we have something called in the tradition called Mahavakya. How many of you have heard the term Mahavakya? Mahavakya means great statement. Okay, we translate this great statement. Why are they so great? They are great because if you understand the statement, you will be liberated. That's what it means. If you understand the truth of that statement, the meaning of that statement, when I say understanding means, I would like to use another word because understanding is something that we use in school. So we think you understand a topic, you get, full marks, you get a grade. It's not like that. Another word is embodying. You embody the meaning of the statement. Then you become liberated. So there are in total many Mahavakyas, many great statements, all right, in the scriptures. But I'm going to choose the popular form. Okay, the main four that are very popular in the tradition. The first one is called, you can see Prajnanam Brahma, which means consciousness is Brahma. Now, Shiva in the opening speech spoke about how physicists talk about consciousness. We've been talking about consciousness 3,000 years. We have already started talking about it. That early. All right. You can see that it comes from the Upanishad, this statement. And then next one, the self is consciousness. I am Atma Brahma. Because now Brahman is consciousness, so therefore the self is of the nature of consciousness. Now, next, that consciousness, you are Tattvamasi, you are that consciousness. The statement says. And finally, you arrive at, I am that consciousness. So these four statements, when understood, every word can be unpacked. Now there is a text entirely just on this Tattvamasi, the consciousness that you are. There's an entire text just on this one statement. Just on that one statement, just unpacking it, there's a text. The text is called Vakya. Okay, you can go and take a look at it. All right, so you can see now when I understand these statements, I can become actually liberated. It sounds very easy, isn't it? Yes or no? Yes or no? I'm telling you, it is easy. It is easy, actually. In fact, it is very easy. How many of you have heard Ramana Maharshi, or the name Ramana Maharshi? He uses the word not sulabha, he said ati sulabha. It means, you know what? Not sulabha means easy. Ati sulabha means very easy, he says. So you know why it's very easy? Because we think when you want to attain liberation, you need to learn. These statements are not for learning, it's for unlearning. That's why it's very easy. If you unlearn, it's a process of unlearning because we have taken on so many identities, so many definitions about the nature of myself. And now I need to what? Unlearn. So that's why he says very nicely. I love that statement by Ramana Maharshi. It's very easy. So now if I understand these four, right? These four verses, I can become liberated. Now, so consciousness is my nature. Agree? Not according to me, according to the Shastra, consciousness is my nature, correct? So therefore, consciousness is the nature of all of these things that I just talked about, liberation, correct? Do you see the point now? Because earlier we saw this liberation. So if consciousness is Brahman, and knowing Brahman is liberation, then consciousness is all of this. Shankara makes this point in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. He presents this very beautifully. He says, if you know this, if you understand this, if you know that four statements, the truth of it, right? Then what happens? You become liberated. When you become liberated, then you have all of these qualities. All right, for understanding what it is. So far, so good. Right? It's also a question. So far, so good. Right. So now that I understand consciousness as of this nature, then what happens then as a result? That's what Prakash shares. We then now experience liberation. What is liberation? Liberation destroys rebirth. But to be honest, is rebirth a problem? If I tell you next birth, you're going to be a son of a billionaire, is that a problem? So, right, it's not a problem. So rebirth is not a problem. You're picking up a straw man actually. When we say what I call rebirth is a problem. Rebirth is never a problem. Rebirth is not a problem if the rebirth gives you something you desire. So rebirth is not a problem. So that's why people sometimes do not investigate into the whole concept of liberation as what you call as being freeing oneself from the cycle of birth and death. We need to investigate into it. When does rebirth become a problem? The rebirth becomes a problem when we have these problems. Take a look at this. When we suffer sorrow right now, it becomes a problem to us. Yes or no? Right? Next, suffering, dukkha. It's a problem, correct? It's a problem. You have suffering or sorrow, you automatically reject it. Anyone loves suffering and sorrow here? If you do, let me know. I need an interview with you. I will learn from you. Why is it so? Because whatever sorrow and suffering seems to be does not sit well with my nature. Agree? Right? We just reject it. So that's a very important point. And then Self-inadequacy, this is the root of all the problems actually. We feel that I'm not enough. How many of you feel this way? If you don't, I'll be very surprised. How many of you feel this way? I'm not good enough. I need something, I need more money. Yeah, thanks for breathing. Yeah, let's be honest. Still here. Self-inadequacy means I want to be something other than what I am, right? More money, bigger house, what I call a handsome partner, right? And then great job. Anything that I want to be different from what I'm having right now means I feel inadequate. That's what it means. So this self-inadequacy, when it expands, right, and it consumes our life, it leads to suffering and sorrow. That's where it begins. And when it's controlled, it's okay. Dharma can actually control it. The beautiful thing about dharma, we follow the right, wrong, duty, everything. It actually controls this self-inadequacy, keeps it in check. When it's not in control, it becomes a problem. Lastly, existential crisis. You wake up one day, you ask, what is the purpose of life? Anyone of you had this question ever? Right? What is the purpose of life? Especially after a funeral. Right? After we go to a funeral, we ask. Next day, back to the same breakfast, same friends, all of that. But after a particular incident, that sometimes we have these existential questions. But when those questions aren't answered or I can't find answers, it becomes an existential. This is what liberation is from. Because when we call rebirth, what we call as rebirth, right, is that it actually is a perpetual cycle of these experiences. That's what we're trying to get out. So because all of this, you see, what is in the future cannot be predicted, right? But this is what I'm experiencing right now in the present. This is what I want to get out. And this is what all about. So when you talk about now how is liberation achieved, very simple. Look at this beautiful mantra from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. It says, the Upanishad says, as long as the self does not know the Lord, which is Brahman or consciousness, it gets attached to the worldly pleasures and is bound. But when it knows him, Brahman, all fetters means all the things that bind, right, fall away from it. It becomes free. So the way to then get liberated is to know. Please fill the blanks. Brahman. No. If I know Brahman, I'm not saying the Upanishad is saying, right? If I know Brahman, I become free. That's what it is. So now that we looked at it, what is the means to liberation? How do I know Brahman, right? I showed you 4 mantras earlier, right? 4 verses. How do I bring it into my life? So the Upanishad itself tells us how to do it. So there are 3 methods. First one is you must listen. Listening here means you listen to the teachings of Brahman. So first of all, that means you go to a teacher and you listen about the teachings of Brahman. It's called Brahma Vidya. You will have heard of this, or Brahma Jnana, or sometimes called even Atma Jnana, self-knowledge. All right, it's also possible. After you listen, you got to do 2 other things. So this is the basis. That is the first thing you need to do. After that, you need to do reasoning. You need to employ reasoning on what you have heard. You should not just blindly believe it. That's what it means. That's why this blind belief business is not there in the Vedic tradition. You need to reason it. And then after you reason, that's called manana, you need to do embodiment. Embodiment means what? You make that knowledge part of you. Like suppose I ask you, what is your gender? Would you take out your NRIC and check? Or your passport and check? Would you check it? Yes or no? Why? Because you have embodied. Check. Then you have no doubts about your gender. The same way, when you learn about Brahman, when you get embodied, that means you now see yourself as the very nature of Brahman, as consciousness itself. There are no doubts anymore. That's what happens. Now, when this happens, then you are liberated. So this is basically the concept of liberation. Now let me talk about what does this got to do with Sadhana Panchakam? Because Sadhana Panchakam does exactly that. It teaches us to liberate ourselves. Now, what is unique about Sadhana Panchakam? I'll tell you something. It gives you the pedagogy. Pedagogy means a way of learning. It teaches us how to know the self as consciousness. Now that I've shared quite a bit, a lot of things would have been very nice to hear, but we don't know what consciousness is, isn't it? Or I know something about it, but I don't know what it really means. So how to know the self-responsiveness? That it gives a pedagogy. Next, the terms Shravana, Mana, Nidhyasa does not appear in the text explicitly. There's a reason for it. I'll tell you why. And approaching a guru in the Sadhana Panchakam is a 13th sadhana. How many sadhanas are there in Sadhana Panchakam? How many? 40. And number 30, sadhana. Today's world, you want to attain liberation, your first sadhana is to look for the guru. The text says it is not the first sadhana. It is the 13th sadhana. So what does that mean?
Need to prepare.
I need to prepare myself even before I look for a teacher. That's a Satvidvan verse. That's a verse. And emphasis on preparation of the mind, which is called Chitta Shuddhi, and embodiment, which is how to assimilate. This is what Sadhana Panchakam does. And also, this text assumes that the qualified seeker is renunciate. A renunciate means a Swami or a Swamini, a sannyasi. So, most of Shankara's texts are written for the sannyasis. But a lot of time you have a Vedanta class, don't be a sannyasi here, right? Is there any sannyasi here? So, what does that tell us? Text is meant for an audience, but the audience becomes a different audience. That's why I wrote it. The reason for the commentary is for this way. Because my teacher was also a sannyasi. Okay, so it is very important that we present the knowledge in a way that it is meant for the audience, relevant to the audience. That's the key. And why is it so important to me? Because I'm also not a sannyasi. Correct? So when I interpret this knowledge that I learned in the tradition, it needs to be presented in a way that makes sense. Now, let's say you have a family with young kids. Can you go for 3-month course Vedanta in Rishikesh? Yes or no? It's very difficult. I wouldn't say no. It's very difficult, correct? But if you can do your sadhana where you are, would that be helpful? That is what a commentary. That's the kind of commentary that I wrote in this thing. So, what is the problem Sadhana Panchakam solves? Is basically it solves the problem of ignorance. This is the primary problem. I don't know myself, I don't know Brahman, right? So that's the primary problem. So basically, I don't have knowledge. And then because I don't have knowledge, I have a lot of doubts, correct? Agree? When I don't have knowledge, absence of knowledge, I have a lot of doubts. And because I have doubts, there is incongruity. That means, you know what? Big problem that we have when we learn Vedanta. This is the biggest problem that I see in the Vedanta circles. I know Brahman, but after that, it doesn't impact my life. I'm still miserable. I scold everyone. I get scolded. I treat everyone badly. I cannot accept others. Have you seen? Don't interrupt. Okay, it's a common problem, right? We attend classes, attend for 3 years, 10 years. Wow, I can recite all the scriptures. I can even recite from memory. But has life changed? No. Incongruence continues to be there. Sometimes they call it cognitive dissonance. I know, but I cannot do. How many of you have had that experience? This one you can respond because all of us are, right? Morning, I want to go for a job. The alarm goes. Snooze. I know, but I cannot. This is called cognitive dissonance. So that's why it solves. So what have I emphasized in this book? Let's talk about the book now. Remember, I'm writing this for a reason. It's a reflection of my own life experience as well. So what did I do? I was focusing on what are the practical problems seekers face when trying to attain or seek liberation. Number one, the landscape of the seekers is changing. Look at the landscape. Anyone here sannyasi? Sannyasi, I know I can see the ochre robe color, but any sannyasi here? None, zero. I teach Vedanta every week in my class, zero sannyasi. I see people who are all usually householders, right? Or brahmacharis, meaning they are not married, right? So landscape is changing. Back then when Shankara wrote, the landscape was what? All sannyasi. Okay, that is changing. So that's a practical problem. So even if today you have a Vedanta class, the teacher is likely to be a
household.
Today, Vedanta class, you go everywhere. When you invite scholars, usually it is a householder, is it? One who speaks that. Depends. Gita Jayanti recently ended. You saw the chief speaker? Okay, I know you all didn't go. Okay. So, usually when you go to all the ashrams, the teachers, all the acharyas are what? Swamis or Grahasta?
Swamis.
And then the people sitting in front are all grahasthas. So basically, the Swami is telling you, become like me, and you are looking there, looking at Swami, how to become like me. That's what we do. Do you think you can learn comfortably when you think that you're not good enough? You think you can learn peacefully when you think that your current state is not acceptable? You think you can learn? Do you think there is good self-esteem, positive self-esteem in that state? Absolutely. That is why it has got nothing to do with the Swami, it has got nothing to do with the teaching tradition. It is a problem that we need to solve. All right, and Vyasa helped us with the Bhagavad Gita because Krishna was not a sannyasi and Arjuna was not also. The teacher of Vedanta in Krishna, he's not a sannyasi. And a lot of Upanishad teachers were not sannyasis either, just so that you know. Right, so next, a lot of time you seek Vedanta, but you don't see results. Any one of you had that experience? Right, correct? This is another problem. Okay, I talk about this in the book as well. Why is it that we don't see results? Because there's something we're not doing actually. We are doing the right thing, but not so right. There's some tweaking that is necessary, some fine-tuning. Next, challenges of intellectual understanding. Some people go for the class and then after that fall asleep. Midway we fall asleep. What happens? Why? So abstract, right? So abstract. So because why you're sitting, right? You're sitting and then you're falling asleep. That is why. What is the big mistake here? First, learn how to meditate while sitting. Before you come to sit to listen. Shankara says that in the text. Before you even start listening to the teaching, first prepare yourself. And then integrate teachings into daily life. It's a big problem I've seen. Right? In the class, angel, go home, devil. Right? In the class, for everything perfect answer. Does Guruji comes, yes, Swamiji, yes, Guruji, go home, terror. Right? Scold everyone, scold the kids, scold the wife. Everything happens at home. They terrorize everyone who comes into contact. They can't integrate. Why? Because the teaching doesn't talk about it. It only talks about consciousness. It doesn't talk about your behavior. You need to handle behavior as well, isn't it? Right? If not, you see all the wrong, behaviors coming out from right knowledge. Is that possible? It's possible because of habit. And next point is emotional readiness and maturity. A lot of times your emotion not ready and not knowing where and what to work on to see progress. After some time you hit a wall. How many of you had experienced this? You sit for classes after you hit a wall. Don't know what else to do. Very personal question, Only I raise it. Okay? We hit a wall. We don't know what to do. So why is it that we hit a wall? We feel that we're not getting what we want. So the problem here, now I'm going to summarize. Better for time. So what does Sadhana Panchakam do? Last two slides. So remember I said the main problem is ignorance, correct? I don't know about the self, I don't know about consciousness. And what is the ignorance made of? Absence of knowledge, I have doubts, and I have incongruity, right? Cognitive dissonance. So Sadhana Panchakam proposes 5 sadhanas for absence of knowledge. Out of the 40, 5 sadhanas is how to overcome this absence of knowledge. And then 4 sadhanas to overcome the doubts that may arise when you sit with the teacher or when you are listening or learning about Brahman or the self. And guess how many sadhanas for incongruity? I know you think simple math, right? Oh, 20 sadhanas. But look at the difference, distribution. Interesting, right? Look at the difference. Where does Shankara put the emphasis on? Where? Where our effort all go. We only do this. Sit down and listen, listen, listen. And after that, listen. After that, listen. After that, listening. After that, we continue listening. We are not tackling the doubts, which is for these 20 sadhanas, 50% of Sadhana Panchakam is how to deal with incongruity. Because the biggest problem is when rubber meets the road. When practical, when we get into living our life, that's where the problem begins. And Adi Shankara anticipates that, and in this text, with 40 sadhanas, he mentioned it. Now the question is 24 and 5. What's balance? What's balance? 11. So where are the 11 sadhanas? Okay, let's look at it now. So how is absence of knowledge overcome? By listening to the teaching. Shravana, remember earlier I mentioned the 3 things that we do to listen to the teaching. How you overcome doubts is through manana, resolving doubts. So there are 4 sadhanas for resolving doubts, and then embodying the knowledge to overcome cognitive dissonance. There are 20 sadhanas. So the balance Where does it come from? Is the preparation. Beautiful, isn't it? Adi Shankara in Sadhana Panchakam prepares you. He tells you how to prepare yourself. And for that, he prescribes 11 sadhanas. So with that, now what happens? Here is where it starts. Observance of Dharma, Karma Yoga, mindfulness and devotion. All of that come together as 11. And remember, what number sadhana is approaching the teacher?
13.
Number 13. So when you have not done 11, what happens when you approach the teacher? Huh?
No.
Not ready. And you know what you do? You blame the teacher. What about this teacher? Half the time he's making jokes. What is he saying? I don't understand. He's a really bad teacher. Do you think we have the right to make such conclusions? When we ourselves are not competent? So what should we be doing there? We should work on the preparation. And Shankara for that gives 11 sadhanas for preparation. So I've written in the book, I've also elaborated how this 11 sadhanas preparation is for a person like you and I, who take the MRT possibly every day, take the bus, we eat in the food courts, we go to work, because our challenges are very different. Because the Swami who's teaching at the ashram, his challenges are different. Our challenges are. Do you agree? Yes or no? They're different. What the Swami or Swami may not know what our challenges might be. Might be. And even if we express it, sometimes it's difficult to understand, isn't it? Right? What we go through. It could be our mortgage, it could be our kids, having learning challenges, special needs, so many, a host of aging parents, right? Body that's not helping. These are different types of challenges that we face. So we need to address it. And what I've done in that commentary is to address it by giving a bit more of practical context. How do you bring these sadhanas into your life so you can live it before you seek them? Or you can prepare yourself, two things, right? Prepare and then seek, or prepare and also seek at the same time. So you do this parallel. So that whenever you have problems, you know where the problem is. Where was the problem then?
Here.
Yes, it is here. It's here. So when I sit here, I see some problem, I cannot understand it. What must you do? So keep focusing here. So it's like a bird with two wings. On one side, you prepare yourself. On the other side, you seek the knowledge. This is how I have presented Sadhana Panchakam as something very valuable. And I've also written about how we can remove cognitive dissonance or incongruity. We learn about the self being free, but we can't live that. What should we do? I've also elaborated that. And one special thing about this book is at the end of towards the end, there is actually key verses from the principal Upanishads. Okay, that means the Upanishads is a very important point. Remember the 4 things that we saw? The 4 verses that we saw? So I also presented the Upanishads in English, of course, and Sanskrit as well, so that you can also get a flavor of what it is. With that, I thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Okay, so before I begin the Q&A, because just now not much response from the audience, how many of y'all have questions? Okay, then I'll ask all the questions.
You have a few seconds to even digest your question.
First. So I think the first question I have, you had in the book as well, you talk a lot about the preparation stage. A lot of it is controlled by Dharma. Or you had a very nice line just now that Dharma controls self-inadequacy. And in the book, you talk a lot about the yamas, niyamas, observance of the festivals, Panch Mahabhuta. We think of these things as what we do and not in the scope of moksha liberation. How does Dharma help in this? How does following all these things?
Okay, so you see, when we do any kind of a great question, by the way. All right, now, if you look at our lives as Hindus or as Vaidikas, etc., we have certain daily religious obligations. But give me some examples of it that you do every day. Sorry, puja, what else? Sandhya Vandanam, what else? Sorry, chanting, yes, what else? Sorry? Writing the land. What else? Pranayama. What else? Offering to God. Meditation, offering to God, right? You can see you do all of this as duties, correct? Now, do you negotiate with these duties or you just do it? Sometimes you cannot. It's called negotiation. But it's a practical challenge we have, right? So what happens when we follow our duty without negotiation? What happens to the mind? When you do something without negotiating, you just do it. And you try your best to do it. What happens within the nature of the mind? Something more, what else? Discipline. Now, this discipline transforms into the preparation of the mind for motion. See now. So the technical term for this in Vedanta is called Chitta Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi or Antakarana Shuddhi. Chitta Shuddhi means mental purification. So when we start doing our duties without negotiation, that is, we don't compromise. If I tell myself every day I'm going to do a puja, what do? Do the puja. I do the puja. If I say every day I'm going to do pranayama, what do? I do without negotiation. Even got nose blocked, still do it. At least one nose is working, right? One nostril is working, correct? You still do it. So when you do it without negotiation, something happens to the nature of the mind, isn't it? Correct? Now that discipline impacts the mind, and that's what is called the Shuddhi or purifying. This purification of the mind takes place at multiple levels. And one other aspect of Dharma, which is very beautifully stated in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, which is called Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, or this is called a very important, what I call definition of Karma Yoga, which means you bring acceptance and equanimity to the results of whatever that comes to your life. Today, what we do is whatever that happens to us, we can do. It depends on the result. If something I like, I embrace. If I don't like, I push it away. If I look at the result as prasada from Ishvara, what would you do? That's Gopi and Dev saying no choice. You just have to accept. When you cultivate this samatva, which is called acceptance, the mind gains what we call as a non-reactivity. When this non-reactivity comes, right, happens, you realize that you are actually less unhappy. One of the things that you notice about people with depression is there is a problem with rejecting certain thoughts. And they call it rumination. Psychologists call that rumination. So why that happens is because I think some thoughts are unacceptable. They should not come up. And some thoughts are okay. But the moment I allow all thoughts as prasadam, what happens? The mind gains the expanse, like a container for all experience. That prepares us for moksha. That's a preparation. So everything we do as duty, as dharma, has one benefit, which is it purify the mind in a way to make it what I call a great container for knowledge to be poured into us. Does that make sense? Right? It doesn't make sense. Okay. Just leave time.
And the other question is, as we are practicing dharma on this path, how do we know our chitta shuddhi is getting better? How do we know that we are progressing? Because a lot of times when we are saying in the class, lucky my wife is not here, I'm an angel, and my wife will say, she would say, I'm the devil, right? But then how do you know that we are progressing on the Adhyatma path correctly?
Okay, so there is in our Bhagavad Gita is a good text. There's a chapter for the demonic qualities. The chapter for qualities of the Deva, Devi Sampati and Asuri Sampati, 2 chapters. So when I'm progressing in this path, what happens is I see less of the negative qualities. It will slowly go away. You want to know what negative qualities the Bhagavad Gita? Ask incentive, when read. We want to know whether I'm progressing by gaining those great good positive attributes. Also look at the chapter for the Deva Sampati, Devi Sampati. So look at these 2 chapters and it'll tell you, and it's a good indicator. So every day, after 2-3 months, look like check. Happen. Don't happen. This one has gone away, this one has gone down. That's why the Shastras give us this. Right? So that we can, it's like a checklist for ourselves. Whether we are taking the right direction. It is a very reflective path, right? I think you mentioned that as well. Right? It's a very reflective path, actually. It's not about others. It's about person. I don't waste my time judging others, right? I spend more time looking at myself. How can I become a better person than I was yesterday? That's how we prepare ourselves. And like Shastras help us through, whether I have this demonic quality, are they going away, are they diminishing? Or am I developing and cultivating this, creative deva qualities?
And that's where also the guru comes in.
Now, the guru's job is to introduce knowledge and interpret. That's why, the listening to the teaching, the guru has a very important role. All right. The guru's role is to be supportive in the listening process, because the teacher has to present what let's say, the Shastra says. So let's say we know the Upanishad teaches this. The teacher will now share with you what the Upanishad teaches. And also the next stage of the teacher is to be, sometimes you have doubts, right? The second stage. Sometimes you have some doubts and you cannot seem to overcome it. During my early years, I remember like my teacher used to be in Penang, right? And then when I have doubts, I will immediately make a call. At that time, no WhatsApp. So they all trunk calls, they call it. So I will pay a lot of money for the call, but I have a doubt. I cannot go to bed without resolving the doubt. I need to resolve it. So what do? I call my teacher and say, can you please answer me? What's the problem? So the teacher's role is also to resolve the doubts. Actually, those very tight knots, they call it in the Upanishad, Hridaya Granthi. They call it the knots of the heart that needs to be removed. The teacher's job is to remove the doubt. The teacher's primary role is the listening and the doubt, removing the doubt. In the embodiment, right, is primarily our hearts.
Oh,
That's where it's our burden. Because it's your embodiment is you, right? The teacher may test, may evaluate. These days teachers don't do it, right? But a lot of them don't do it anymore. I wish they did, right? So if there is more, if the teacher can also participate in that embodiment by helping the seeker do a checklist: am I progressing? Am I regressing? It can be very helpful actually for a Sandhaka. Otherwise, we are like groping in the dark or we're self-delusional, I'm liberated, I'm free because I have no doubts. But after you open your mouth, you harm others, you hurt others, and you don't even know that it's possible.
there is a doubt at the back of the class.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I've had the privilege of being able to flip through this book a little bit. But I came a little bit late, so I'm not sure if you already answered this. This is very empowering. Just on the face of it, whatever I've seen, 40 steps. So to an extent, you think of 40 choices. So my question is exactly that. When you think of 40 steps, does the sadhak in this case have to try to take all these 40 steps, or is it okay to take half of them, 10 of them?
Great question, by the way. So, technically, the text presents it as a linear process. Linear means one after the other, successive. Okay. However, it is good to be aware of the 40 while you could be somewhere in the 40. You understand? It's like I may have a map in my hand, but I may not have gone to every part of that, of that place, right? But I still have a map, correct? I know that I want to get there, but I know that I'm here right now, correct? But imagine you don't have a map. Then you are just lost, correct? So to answer your question, it's a linear process, right? I do one at a time, or maybe I'm already achieved or accomplished maybe the first 4 or first 5 is possible. You can't deny it, or even first 20 is possible. But it's good to know all the 40 so that I have a map in hand and I know where I am and I know what I need to do or where to get to. Does that answer your question? Absolutely. Thanks for that question.
Dr. Chen.
Thank you, Kadir. That was very, very independent. My question is, I understand the preparatory stage, the mananam, the first is Shravanam, mananam, nididhyasana, is fine. And then the prasada buddhi, arpana buddhi, all this is for chitta shuddhi.
Yes.
That's all internalized. But the challenge is being aware that you are pure consciousness.
Mm.
I keep reading, but how does that, I don't know how to express it even.
Okay.
How do you, is it experiential? Or what exactly is it, the struggle to find the answer to this?
It's 50% of the text, right? What you're saying. 50% of the text is what is to solve that problem that you're saying. 20 sadhanas in the 40 talks about this problem.
Oh.
Because when we keep reading, it's not going to solve the problem.
Yes.
In fact, it creates a greater burden, if you ask me, right? Especially the burden of expectancy, right? Because I'm hoping for one day to see it. And I read today, I'm not seeing it. I read tomorrow, not seeing it. What does that mean? This is where there's a very important part. Is number one, you should not do it alone. You should do it with someone who has a certain degree of stability. I'm not saying liberated, because it's a big word, loaded word. These days, when they liberated means that's when they do puja, they do father puja, then they bring an altar for you, all that will start. That's a problem. So what you should look for is someone that you think that was, who have achieved that next step that you're looking for, right? So have a samvada with them, conversation, dialogue with them. And that's why satsanga is very important. Coming together is very important because you bring these doubts into the room. And some people may have crossed that bridge that you are trying to cross right now, and their perspective can help you. So at this point, reading is not very helpful anymore. That's what I meant by after some time we hit a wall. And
Are you implying that I should see a guru of some sort?
I'm not implying anything, but I'm only implying that you should have a dialogue about this with someone that you think would have potentially achieved what you're trying to achieve. Okay, that's number one. Number two is reading is not going to help you any because there is a very important what I call concept. This is called it is a technical word. Okay, you don't like the word, just ignore it. You can't remember. It's okay. It's called prasankhana vada, which Shankara talks about. It appears in his commentaries and also a text called Upadesha. What does it mean? It means repetition. See, when you repeatedly listen or read something, Shankara says it's not going to help you. You know why? Let's say I read this text, okay? I'm not getting it. So what I do tomorrow, I read another text. I'm not getting it. Because the problem is not with the text. Where's the problem? There's an internal block. The granthi is not yet identify that not. How do you identify yourself? Very difficult, right? Because there is a lot of biases, right? Self-serving bias. All of that is there. So what do I need? I need a mirror. And who can be the mirror? Someone that you trust. You have a dialogue with them and find out where is that not. And then you try to. So it's a very, very tender process. And that's why 20 sadhanas is actually a problem. That what you're talking about is actually nidhyasa.
Yes.
Is the job of nidhyasa. And there are 20 sadhanas that Shankara prescribes for that. And it involves, what? Even eating the right type of food, he says. How you approach food also has a significant impact on the way, you actually embody this knowledge. Can you believe that? He says that. And then he says, don't talk to people unnecessarily also, he says. Yeah. He says, very beautifully, simple, all very practical things, he says. Because the moment we talk unnecessary things, what happens? Time is taken away from introspection, right? So he gives that kind of great sadhanas, and it's doable actually, yes. So explore it, yeah. I mean, you don't have to get the book to explore it. The sadhanas is also on the internet. Yeah, you can check it out. So let's take a look at it.
No, I think the issue is with the English word consciousness. I think that's where we get stuck because there are so many. It's a semantic issue.
Yes.
That's the way I see it.
Do you want to talk about that?
No, I think it's much deeper.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
that consciousness is too surface.
Yeah.
So we can't go deeper.
Did people at the back, could they hear it? So the statement is, there might be an issue with the word consciousness, which is what is preventing or could be the knot or the block that we're trying to do. So that is the premise that possibly why we are not incongruence that we experience. So
I agree with you. I have no disagreements. Because there is no, I think there is no equivalent in English to present that concept of Chaitanya, Jnanam, etc. So that is why when I teach in my classes, I say consciousness with a small c, consciousness with a big C. I use that word. So when I use the word consciousness with a small c, that means it's all the mental functions, all the mental states, or what we call as cognitive states, or cognitive consciousness. When I use consciousness with a capital C, I'm talking about an all-pervasive reality that becomes the foundation of existence, C, which is often called, you might have heard of this combination called Satchit Ananda. Have you heard of that? Right? The chit in Satchit Ananda is consciousness, but we need to unpack it. When I say unpack, the word has to be investigated into. That's the job of working with a teacher or a mentor, for the matter. I am very mindful of using the word guru because guru means someone up there, right? Correct? Some the best times I had with my teacher is during lunch, walking with him, and that's when a lot of time my questions got resolved. It's not, when he's sitting on the pulpit and I am sitting on the floor and learning. So the whole approach is we need to start thinking about this. I'm so glad that that question was asked. We need to start thinking, what is this consciousness of the small c, the consciousness of the big C? The good news is today physicists, quantum physicists and physicists are now alluding to the consciousness with the big C. And they are trying to say that, hey, there is something to consciousness with the big C that becomes the substratum or the foundation of the universe. But Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, Chandogya Upanishad. What's the dating? Anyone knows? Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, the whole Sarvam, everything, right, is filled up with consciousness. Which what the physicists are saying right now, Chandogya Upanishad dating is about 800 BC. That is how many thousand years ago?
3,000.
About 3,000 years ago. The Upanishad say the whole universe is actually.
Questions?
I'm nowhere anything near to Vedanta or liberation, but just a very simple question. Coming to the checklist we were just mentioning just now. Okay, like, why is it a necessity for us to do a checklist every time? Because when we go according to the Dharma, we are doing the good things, we know the needs is good. Let's put aside our karma, okay? So we're doing the good things, this checklist necessary.
Okay.
Sorry, do people have back? You all here? Okay.
So your point is, if I know it is good, I don't need to check this.
I feel that I'm doing my Dharma
Right.
in the right way.
Yes.
So that's what I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
Right? Perfect. Right? What that was.
Have you ever, not challenging you, the great question. Have you encountered the Bhagavad Gita? Arjuna told Krishna, I feel like not fighting. And he felt that he was doing the right thing. Krishna would have said, yeah, you feel that it is right. So what should we do? Run away. Bhagavad Gita, one chapter. But true, right? Why did he speak 17 chapters? After that, you tell me. Correct? Why? There is a bias. We all have biases. We think it is good, but actually it might not be. Dharmic. There is a bit of like and dislike with respect to what I choose and what I want to do. So why the checklist is, the checklist helps us to overcome this, what I call bias towards likes and dislikes. That's why we have a checklist. Otherwise, we may think that we feel, I love the way that you presented it, because you said, I feel. Feeling is it true? Absolutely. Feeling can change over time. Today I feel okay with this, tomorrow I don't feel that way. So therefore, to overcome that, I need something independent of human, the independent of human biases. So that's why we have Shastra, scripture, to overcome it, so that we have something independent, continue to be a compass for us. Otherwise, our internal compass can change. Our true north can become south. Agree? Not just for you, all of us here in the room, even for me also, I'm included. And that true north becomes south. So how do I know it's true north? Is it right? Engage. That is why the definition of Shastra is beautiful. Shasana Trayate Ishanda. That which teaches, right? That it teaches and commands, that is called Shastra. Because it always gives us the true knowledge. That is why we look at Shastra with respect. Does that make sense to you? Thank you for asking.
I think we have time for last 3 questions. Repeat questioners are not allowed. Anyone else in the audience?
Ask a question.
Okay,
The book can also.
those who have read the book.
Yeah.
That's a higher bar. And we should raise the
Cover is the cover is not people who can tell us.
Okay, Dr. Prasad.
I can ask you privately.
The floor is yours, please, go for it.
Brahman, the all-pervasive reality is a manifestation.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
So, but in this all-pervasive reality, we have both dharma and adharma being coexisting. I mean, you can see the world around.
Yes.
So, from a Vedantic standpoint, how is that possible?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have to say, could the people at the back hear the question?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
Share the question.
Yeah, please. Do.
So what he says is, the all-pervasive or reality that we say is a manifestation of Brahman. Actually, to be fine-tuning, it is Brahman.
Yeah,
Right? It is not even a manifestation of Brahman. It is Brahman. And in that reality, there is no adharma, wrong, right? And then dharma. How is it possible? Correct. So how do you explain that? So I wish I had a whiteboard, but there's no marker. Can I have marker so I can present this through a drawing? Okay, so I want to present you the Vedantic cosmology to explain this. Okay. Do you remove the hyper? Okay. So, I think it's okay. Let's do it. Yeah, let the light to make up this. Okay, so how do we overcome this challenge? Because the very question, because can Brahman have dharma and adharma? Technically, if it has dharma and adharma, then it's not Brahman actually. Because Brahman is free from dharma and adharma, right? So we say that the foundation, the subset of the whole is called Brahman, okay? Or we can call it consciousness, fixed, okay? Now, this Brahman becomes the world, okay? Becomes the world, or what we see as the universe. So this world now is separated into three levels of reality. So there is, I use the word curve, I use representing the first level as a curve because the manifestation. Second, and then third. So here we call this undifferentiated. Pardon my writing. All right, this is called Abhyakta in Sanskrit. This is called Hiranyagarbha. Some of you would have heard this term, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's called Hiranyagarbha. This is total subtle reality. This is called Virat. Virat is cross. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example how to make this. By this, you're already probably confused now. Probably you're really, what is this? I thought you were going to answer the question. He's making it worse. Hold on. Let's bring this into yourself. Right now, you're awake. Am I right? You are seeing, hopefully, you're awake. You are seeing the reality, you're looking at me, correct? You are looking at the gross world, correct? So this is called, the Upanishad is a very nice example. This is called the waking state, correct? When you see the world. Then when you go to bed and then you are dreaming. In the dream, you see a world, correct? And the world is as real as the gross, as long as you're in the dream. The lion chases you, it's so real. You wake up and then you realize it's actually a dream life. So this is called what? It's similar to the dream state. Then what is this? Which state is this? Sleep, deep sleep state. Dreamless sleep as we call it. Okay, this is called deep sleep. Now, in which of the three states do you have problems of right and wrong? First two, exactly. First two. Once you come to deep sleep, is there anything to even talk about? No, same thing. So now, at the Brahman, at the undifferentiated stage, there is no dharma. The dharma only comes up when it becomes pure. It comes up when it manifests into the world as subtle reality. This subtle reality is where the heavens are. The Swarga, as they call it, it all belongs to this world. This is the gross reality we see, Bhuloka. So, dharma and adharma belong to this part. This part of Brahman is free from dharma. So, the absolute position is that Brahman is not bound by or consciousness not bound by karma, no. So that's how the cosmology is. So if you